Prosper log, show date 140816. We begin this entry by taking a moment to pause and pay tribute to the lovely Miss Arlene Martell, who is no longer with us. She passed away on the 12th of August 2014 on show date 140812 in the middle of the night from a heart attack. Ladies and gentlemen, and any transgendered species, I invite you to pause for a moment. All right. Just pop the snap. There we go. All right. Let's kick off this week's entry the right way. Welcome to Prosper, everyone. This week's entry is brought to you by Wally's Aluminum Shaping Process. Wasp Aluminum Art is to be found on Facebook, run by my friend Wally Fortier. All right. I don't know about y'all, but this has been a long week for me, and it's not over yet. So with that, I'm in go big mode, folks. Go big or go home. This week's beers, got two of them. Blue Moon Summer Honey Wheat. 5.2%. Proper opening apparatus, proper technique. Not done yet, folks. Like I said, it's been a long week. That's a tall mug of happy right there. Well, cheers to all of y'all. Kaplach, as they would say in the Klingon Empire. That is very, very good indeed. Alright, folks. Let's get this show rolling, shall we? The first two birthdays I'm going to recognize from this week, they're twins, folks. First set of twins that I actually can think of that I know. Amber Palmer Cruz and Trina Palmer, both born on the 11th. Ladies, happy birthday to you both. Now, Amber's my neighbor here. And when Amber came, Trina came with her to help her get settled in and everything else, whatnot else. Ladies, pleasure meeting you both. Amber, miss you. You need to come back. Trina, I miss seeing you too. Cheers. Next on the list, Goob! Austin Goobert. Now, this guy was one I was in a professional class with. Try to make us better leaders. I don't know about you, Goob, but it worked all right for me. Goob, happy birthday. Cheers. Drink one with me. All right. Next up. Here's a guy that I know from here. I haven't actually met him yet in person. Dustin Shannon. Dustin does the same job I do for a living. Dustin, happy birthday to you. I was glad I was able to help you out back a couple weeks ago. Cheers to you. Finally, from the 11th, Stacey knows. Stacey, how you doing? Hope life's treating you well. Happy birthday to you. Sorry I was late getting it to you. You and Austin, but happy birthday. All right. Birthday greeting from the 12th, extended to my wife's cousin Drew Clevenger. Drew, how you doing, bud? Hope life's treating you well. I hope you had your big one of these like I am right now. Drew, cheers. Next up, from the 13th, Karen Ladson. Now, Karen is a gal I knew from jolly old England. She is the better half to one Lauren Ladson, who I featured a week or two ago on this here show for his birthday. Karen, happy birthday. Alright, and the final birthday greeting for this week was actually yesterday, extended to my good friend Brian Keisley. I knew Brian in good old Germany. I knew him there for a few years. Hung out with him a couple times. Brian, excuse me. Whew. Brian, cheers to you. Birthdays, done. Additional greetings, got to extend one out to Kevin Sherman. Now, Kevin is a guy that I used to work with our mutual friend Josh Baker of Beer and Song of the Day. Kevin and I were constantly feeding Josh ideas for a show. Heck, some of the parts of the show that he still uses today come from Kevin or I. Like me, Kevin also hosts what is considered a spinoff to Beer and Song of the Day. His show, Kevinator's Booze and Metal Show, is a weekly / semi-weekly production, meaning once or twice a week. Kevin, it was good reconnecting with you. Let's hope it all works out. Cheers to you, my friend. I mentioned him a minute ago. Josh Baker, Beer and Song of the Day. Now, I got something I got to take care of here. Josh, on your show Friday, I want to say, when you did your episode before you went on hiatus, you went through one of the Trek trivia questions I provided for you. The answer was Worf, but right after that you said Ethan Phillips. He played Worf, right? Ethan Phillips played Neelix on Star Trek Voyager, whereas Michael Dorn played Worf throughout the run of The Next Generation, the last 4 seasons of Deep Space Nine, and appeared in 5 movies. Now, Josh, you hooked up the Ninja Turtles episode for me on your Cinema Saturday edition of Beer and Song of the Day. For that, I give you the Prosper Salute. But because you thought Ethan Phillips played Worf, gotta give you one of these. Oh, I'm sorry, kids, you shouldn't have saw that. Anyway, Josh, my brother from another mother, I'm glad to see you got your shirts okay. And remember what I told you about that other one. Alright. Now, I'm going to group my final 2 shout-outs for the week together. They are my mom and dad, Gail Riggs and Jeff Dimmitt. Without those two, none of this would have been possible. To you two, thank you for everything. I'd like to think that I am the man I am today because of you two. And I drink to you. Alright. Greetings extended. We had one Star Trek birthday this past week, the day that Arlene Martell died. Bruce Greenwood, Captain / Admiral Pike in the JJ version of Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, turned 58 this week. Bruce Greenwood, happy birthday to you, sir. I give you the Prosper Salute. And I drink to you. Alright. Another thing we like to talk about on this show, football. I have here a list of games. All the games from 17 August through 24 August. Alright, first on the list, Denver at San Francisco. Going with Denver. Come on. Go Peyton. Go Peyton. Before I go any further, yes, I am wearing an Indianapolis Colts number 18 jersey. But it's not Peyton Manning. It's mine. I'm gonna give one more shout out to Samantha McClinton. Without Samantha, I would not have I would not have a set of my own Indianapolis Colts jerseys. Robin would not have her own set of Indianapolis Colts jerseys. Sam, I drink to you. I hope your liver is healed. Alright, I went off track. I apologize. Alright, Denver at San Fran. Going with Denver. Kansas City at Carolina. Now, for those of you that remember the last game that Kansas City played in the last season, last year, was against my beloved Indianapolis Colts. They had a good team, but Indianapolis managed to make the second best comeback in NFL history. Either way, Kansas City's playing Carolina. I'm going with Kansas City for that very reason. Excuse me. All right, August 18th, Cleveland at Washington. The only game that day. I'm going with the underdog on that one. I'm going with Cleveland. Why? Because I can. All right, next up, 21 August, Pittsburgh at Philadelphia. I'm going with Philadelphia. And here's why. Back a couple years ago when Indianapolis and Philadelphia played, when Indianapolis was at Philadelphia, Austin Collie took a pretty hard hit back when he was playing for the Colts. Took a good hit. The game stopped. You got to stop for something like that. The Philadelphia Eagles were taking, they were making sure Austin was okay. Like I said, he took a good hit. They wanted to make sure he was all right. Eagles fans booed the Eagles. Let me say that again. The Eagles fans booed the Eagles. That's right. They booed their own team. You want to talk about true fans? Those do not strike me as true fans. You know what the Eagles did? They basically looked up and like, hey, shut up. They basically gave their fan base, kids, watch your eyes. Oh, hey kids, look at here. They did that to their fans. I do that to the Eagles fans. I do that to the Steelers. But to the Eagles, you earn my respect after that. I give you the Prosper Salute. And I root for you on the 21st. August 22nd, Carolina at New England. That goes without saying. I've told you before, and I'm going to tell you again, I will never, ever, ever root for New England. Band of cheaters. Sorry. My folks, growing up, my parents, Jeff and Gail, they taught me that cheating was wrong. So I will never root for cheaters. Yeah, I don't care. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, they're the only ones still on the team that were all involved in that. I don't care. So Carolina gets my vote. Giants and Jets. Wow, talk about a hometown rivalry. Now, y'all know that there's only 2 times I will root against Eli Manning. It's when he's playing Peyton and when he's playing the Colts. So, Giants and Jets, going with the Giants. Jacksonville at Detroit. Oh, that reminds me. Last week I said Tampa Bay was a part of my division. I was mistaken. I was also tired. Too many freaking Florida teams. Too many California teams. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Either way, I mistakenly said Tampa Bay was in my division when it was not. So, it is Jacksonville that is in my division. I apologize for that, and I give myself one of these, kids, look, a deer! Alright. Jacksonville, Detroit. I'm not rooting for Jacksonville. They're in my division. Oakland at Green Bay. Sorry, Oakland. Not a big fan of you, not a big fan of your fan base. I've heard too many stories. Chicago at Seattle. The Bears. Gotta go with the Bears. I'll bet my buddy Matt Mad Dog Becker likes that call. August 23rd. Tampa Bay at Buffalo. Go with Tampa Bay on this one. I gotta give Florida some love. Florida, the senior citizen state. Hi, Lucky. My dog Lucky just walked in. Dallas at Miami. We all know Tony Romo's going to choke. Got to go with Miami on that one. Tennessee at Atlanta. No way. Not rooting for Tennessee. Same reason I'm not rooting for Jacksonville. They're in my division. Washington at Baltimore. Now, I don't always root for Baltimore, but when I do, they're playing the Patriots. So I'm going with Washington on that one. New Orleans at Indianapolis. No brainer. If you can't figure that out now, you get one of those. St. Louis at Cleveland. Remember how I told you last time I said I was going to root for Cleveland? I'll root for the underdog. Going for Cleveland again. Minnesota at Kansas City. I'm going Minnesota this time. I don't know why. Just calling an urge. Houston at Denver. Really? Really? Houston, the third team in my division, playing Denver, my number 2 team of all time right now. Excuse me. Go with Denver. On the 24th, we are looking at San Diego at San Francisco. Really? San Diego's just going up the road. But I'm going with San Francisco on this one. Not a big fan of Phillip Rivers. Not a big fan of the Chargers, to be honest with you. And finally, Cincinnati at Arizona. I am going for Arizona on this one, even though they did take my offensive coordinator, Bruce Arians. Hey, the man's doing all right with the team. I'll give him that. So I will root for Arizona. All right, now we go to what Prosper is all about. This week's Star Trek episode, Mudd's Women. We have our first encounter with Harcourt Fenton Mudd. Hardcore! The Enterprise is following a freighter into an asteroid field. And while engaged in rescue operations, the Enterprise loses 3 of its 4 lithium crystal circuits. They transport the captain, Harry Mudd, aboard their ship, who is using the name Leo Francis Walsh at the time. And they also transport over his cargo as the ship is destroyed. 3 amazingly beautiful women. These women have an intoxicating effect on the male members of the ship's crew. Go figure. You wouldn't have a good story if they didn't have that. So, as a result of rescuing Harry Mudd and his passenger/cargo, whatever you want to call it, the Enterprise has to set course for Rigel 12 to get some more lithium crystals. However, what Captain Kirk is not ready for is that Harry Mudd has been in contact with Rigel 12 and has struck up a deal between the miners there and himself for the crystals. At the end of the episode, the miners get the girls, the Enterprise gets the crystals, and Harry Mudd goes to jail. Got a little bit of background information on this one. The origins of this story can be found in Gene Roddenberry's early 1964 series outline, Star Trek Is, as a story proposal entitled The Women. That synopsis reads, duplicating a page from the Old West, Hanky Panky aboard with a cargo of women destined for a far-off colony. Interesting premise. This story outline was a candidate for being the first Star Trek pilot, alongside The Cage, which was eventually chosen, and The Perfect World, which became The Return of the Archons. This story was later also one of the candidates for Star Trek's second pilot. Same story for 2 pilots. Imagine that. The other candidates were Where No Man Has Gone Before, which became the second pilot, and The Omega Glory, filmed near the end of the second season. NBC did not choose this episode as the second pilot, mostly because they were worried about the central theme of selling women throughout the galaxy, and the guest stars being an intergalactic pimp and 3 space hookers. Imagine that. They still have a problem with prostitution in the 23rd century. I thought we were going to get past all that. Teleplay writer Stephen Candle recalled of this episode, Gene had the idea of using a personal enhancer allure drug, and I provided the character of Harry Mudd. We spent an afternoon talking about it, and out of the conversation evolved the story idea, and then Of course, I wrote the story. Gene went over in great, meticulous, and obsessive detail, and then I wrote the script. Interesting. A story memo excerpted in The Making of Star Trek. Associate producer Bob Justman wrote, on page 55, we see Benton riding a digging machine toward his cabin. Let's eliminate this device right now. Don't blame him. I mean, that's silly. A lengthy monologue in which Harry Mudd attempted to persuade Uhura into taking the Venus drug was also excluded from the episode. The scene's removal was because it was deemed too wordy and long. Good thing we can't remove all things deemed too wordy and long. Oop, I said it out loud. Roger C. Carmel was extremely disappointed by the deletion of this monologue, later describing it as wonderful. He explained, I remember being very disappointed because I felt the monologue was very effective and very much to the point of the show's philosophy. He nevertheless liked the episode just as much as he liked the second season outing, I'm Mudd. I wonder why. This episode marks the first of 3 appearances of Roger C. Carmel as Harry Mudd. He reprised the character in I, Mudd and the animated series episode Mudd's Passion. Excuse me. Although Grace Lee Whitney, Yeoman Rand, does not appear in the episode, she was on the set during filming, trying to observe everything and get comfortable with the sets and the mood. Eddie Paskey appears in green coveralls for the only time in the series as Connors in sickbay. Eddie Paskey, a good background actor. He was there a lot. Although his offense record says that Harry Mudd is 6'1", Roger C. Carmel was actually 6'3". This can be seen in comparison to the other cast members, including the 6'1" Nimoy, who were all shorter than him. The velour uniforms used in this episode had shrunk since they were first used in the Corbomite maneuver. According to Bob Justman and Herb Solo's book, Inside Star Trek, The Real Story, the velour uniforms shrank every time they were cleaned. The actors' union requirements specified that the costumes had to be cleaned daily. I want my uniform cleaned daily, too. Despite the introduction of the Red Operations Division tunic in the previous episode, Uhura is seen in a gold Command Division uniform, both here and in the Corbomite maneuver. Which do you folks think she rocked better, gold or red? Let me know down yonder. Although Karen Steele and Maggie Threat were given makeup and facial appliances to make them appear ugly as the Venus drug wore off in Harry Mudd's quarters, Susan Denberg appears not to have been similarly made up. Her hair was simply disheveled. You know how that goes. Kirk's quarters have a window in this episode and a few others to follow. These may not be his normal quarters because Spock directs the turbolift to take him, Mudd, and the 3 women to Deck 12. The window will disappear in subsequent episodes. Kirk's quarters are later situated on Deck 5. Good place for him. The quarters used by Mudd and his ladies is the set for Kirk's quarters, with all of the furnishings removed. This marks the first appearance of the soundstage cyclorama used for different planets throughout the series, which was lighted with different colored filters, to give an appearance of many unique colored atmospheres. Associate producer Bob Justman came up with this idea after realizing that reusing the same cloudy background from the 2 pilots over and over again would result in all planets looking the same. Justman personally decided the backdrop colors for each episode. Problems often arise when the colored gels either faded or burned up after a short while in front of a hot light, and the burning gels made an unbearable odor on the set. The backdrop lighting used in this episode for Rigel 12, with tornadic streaks in it, was also utilized in The Enemy Within. You know, I wonder how many people thought that bad smell was Shatner or the director or somebody else that nobody was a big fan of back then. The elliptical-shaped playing cards on which Eve plays solitaire in Ben Childress' home can be seen in the Enterprise Recreation Room in later episodes, Charlie X and the Conscience of the King. You know, that's weird because the Charlie X was aired first. I don't know. Harlan Ellison visited the set during the filming of this episode. Ellison was writing his first draft teleplay for The City on the Edge of Forever at the time in an office at the Desilu lot. Associate producer John D.F. Black couldn't find Ellison in his office and was angered when he finally found him on stage 10 posing for photographs and eating lunch with the cast and crew. You know what? If the man wants to have lunch with the cast and crew, let him. John Black? Hey kids, look, a deer! That's for you. Who cares? I mean, who cares, you know? The man was doing something he wanted to do on his lunch. It was his time. Let him frickin' do it. Alexander Courage composed the music for this episode's trailer. One of only 2 times music was written specifically for a preview. His sultry trombone music was so appropriate it was used in the actual episode as the women stroll through the corridors, while the rest of the score was written by Fred Steiner. Courage composed the soundtrack for the preview of The Man Trap, which he scored likely as his first assignment for the new series, as that episode was the first one aired. Jerry Finnerman was encouraged to be creative in choosing dramatic lighting and camera angles. Bob Justin recalled that he said to Finnerman, "We're all in outer space, Jerry, and we're in color. NBC claims to be the first full-color network, so let's prove it for them. When you see the lights, throw wild colors in. Magenta, red, green, any color you can find. Especially behind the actors when they're in a close shot." Where's my colors? Where's my color? Where's my colors, people? Be dramatic. In fact, go overboard. Backlight the women and make them more beautiful. Take some chances. Nobody can tell you that's not the way the future will look. How can they? They ain't even been there yet. Justman was very pleased with the final results in this episode. He stated guest stars Karen Steele, Maggie Threat, and Susan Denberg looked good looking in real life. Looked even more radiantly lovely and ravishing as they worked their magic upon Captain Kirk and crew after Jerry worked his magic upon the 3 actresses. You know, Bill Shatner must have been in the room been outside when he overheard Justman telling Finnerman to overdo it. I mean, there's no other explanation. The production of this episode went a day over schedule, according to Bob Justman and Herb Solo. This was due to the intricate camera setups used by director Harvey Hart, which had good results but were too time-consuming. Hart also made things difficult for the editors by camera cutting the show, leaving few choices of shot available. Due to these factors, Hart was not invited back to the show. Good. It's being difficult. In an inventive bit of editing, God, that's a tongue twister. Try saying that 5 times fast. The close-up shot of Eve's hand closing in on the Venus drug is followed by a similar close-up of Spock's hand cradling a cracked lithium crystal. After Harry Mudd's trial, as Eve is pleading with Kirk to help the women get to their destination, an offstage voice, ostensibly the director's, can be heard on the soundtrack to say, "Lights," as a cue for the studio technicians to dim the lighting, signaling the failure of the last lithium crystal. Mudd says to Spock, "You're part Vulcanian, aren't you?" Mudd was somehow able to distinguish this in Spock, apparently on sight. It is possible that in the early days of TOS, Spock was meant to look more human than most full-blooded Vulcanians, which would explain Mudd's ability to recognize his hybrid status on sight. In later episodes and throughout the films and later series, Spock is considered to look like any full-blooded Vulcan. This and the original series episode Where No Man Has Gone Before are the only episodes where the crystals that power the Enterprise's engines are called lithium. Throughout the rest of the series, the crystals are called dilithium. Spock's description of the crystals as beautiful is a rare expression of his aesthetic sense. Later, in Assignment Earth, he refers to Isis the cat as a lovely animal. This episode's final scene aboard the bridge is the series' first suggestion that Vulcans have a different arrangement of internal organs than humans. Specifically, McCoy places the Vulcan heart at roughly the place of the human spleen. This is later made more explicit in the Omega Glory. Something Memory Alpha missed. This was also alluded to in A Private Little War. They missed that. Kids, look, a deer! That's for Memory Alpha. At one point, Scotty refers to the Enterprise as weighing almost 1 million gross tons. In the Star Trek Starfleet Technical Manual, author Franz Joseph establishes the weight of a Constitution-class starship as 190,000 tons, just as Gene Roddenberry did in his very first proposal for the series, Star Trek Is. Upon its initial airing, this episode was generally well received. Stephen Candle later noted, "We got a lot of favorable response." Roger C. Carmel likewise said about the episode, "It was a pretty big success, and they got a lot of positive reaction from it." And regarding the script, Herb Solo commented, "It was very well written, it was fun, and it featured 3 beautiful women hookers selling their bodies throughout the galaxy. It later became a standout and a much-loved episode of the series." Well, folks, with that being said, time to finish this guy down. Here we go, beer. Time to go home. Empty as the brain cells, the average Sequest DSV fan. Well, folks, it's that time again. It's time for me to depart. So, everybody, take care of yourselves. Have an awesome night or day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and if you do, name it after me. Don't drink and drive because, well, you might spill your drink. But more importantly, you might kill yourself or somebody else. And drinking and driving is dumber than being a New England Patriots fan. And what's worse than that, root for little crybabies like Tom. Giselle won't let me go to the Pro Bowl. Brady, men slapping women, racism, animal abuse, fake friends, welching on bets, or anybody that is a member of, supports, or defends the Westboro Baptist Church. Things like that are just plain stupid, and I ain't got time for that. Folks, take care, and above all else, live long and prosper.